Hello, and welcome to today's edition of South Asia News. Today we have a special report on the tiny southern Asian nation of Bhutan. It is wedged between India and China. This report will be about the condition of the Bhutanese people. The capital of this Himalayan nation is Thimphu, and roughly 750,125 people live there. 50% of the population is ethnically Bhutanese, while 35% of the population is Nepalese. 15% are nomads. The average life expectancy in Bhutan is 70.1 years old, and the mortality rate of infants is 33.9 deaths per 1,000 births. This is higher than most LGC nations. This is primarily due to Bhutan's friendly and cool Himalayan climate. In the valleys of the Himalayas, temperatures are around 50 to 60 degrees Fahrenheit. The air is clean due to 85.5% of the land being devoted to forests and 13.6% of the land being devoted to agriculture. The average elevation is 2,220 meters above ground, and the highest elevation is 7,570 meters. Natural resources include timber, hydropower, gypsum, and calcium carbonate. The Bhutanese do not really have many material possessions until 1961, when the third king of Bhutan decided to modernize the nation. Now, 91% of the Bhutanese own cell phones, and 39.8% of the population are internet users. A majority of the roads are unpaved, and the country has only one major airport, making infrastructure one of the weak points of the Bhutanese economy. The two major contagious diseases that trouble the Bhutanese people are diarrhea and pneumonia. Clean water is not available in rural areas. However, contrary to other regions of the world, Bhutan has a functional healthcare system that assists all of the sick in the country. Although many people get sick, there is an easy way to cure them through the healthcare system. Other deaths are caused by earthquakes or floods, but those don't occur very often. Bhutan is a constitutional monarchy, and universal suffrage is achieved at 18 years old. Bhutan transitioned from an absolute to a constitutional monarchy in 2008 with the introduction of a parliament. India is a major trading partner of Bhutan, along with Hong Kong and South Korea. Bhutan has been trying to have more trade relations with Bangladesh because that is the only country where they have a trade surplus. The country uses GNH, or gross national happiness, to measure its growth. This is contrary to other ways to measure growth, such as GDP, like most other countries do. Citizens take a survey and state how happy they've been in the past year. The new king, K5 as he is known, began his reign looking after the new democracy, and a majority of the people like him and love the royal family, and they wish to keep them. Bhutan's economy is small and underdeveloped, with a big emphasis on hydroelectric power, agriculture, and forestry. The GDP was 6.432 billion in 2016, and Bhutan continues to grow at a fast rate, about 6%. However, Bhutan is still one of the poorest nations in the world, but it is not poor for the reasons you might expect. Religion is an important part of Bhutanese culture, and 75.3% of all Bhutanese people are Buddhists. So they practice moderation in every aspect of their lives, including in regards to money. Next, we will have Andrew Hill report on Bhutanese culture.
Declan, it's me, Drew. I'm outside in the city of Medford, home of one of the few Tibetan Buddhist temples in the Western Hemisphere, and the only of its specific kind. Now, Tibetan Buddhism is the type of Buddhism that is practiced in Bhutan, and Buddhism is very, very important to the people of Bhutan. It is what ties them together as a culture. It is what has their entire identity as a nation. So this needs to be in the thought of you very much when you talk about how Bhutan is basically a very traditionalist country. Like an example, people are required to wear the dress of the ancestors. You can't wear modern clothes. And if you look at their monarchs, you'll actually see them wearing robes, when with most monarchs, you will see them wearing, suits. An example is even the Emperor of Japan, he wears a suit and tie. But this just shows how important tradition is in Bhutan. Art is another one. Art is purely for religious reasons. The art is not necessarily meant to look pretty. It is meant to demonstrate a religious significance. So artists do not take credit for their artwork. You wouldn't have a Michelangelo of Bhutan because that would be someone taking credit for their work. People just don't do that there. It's all anonymous because it's all meant to have a religious significance. The religious figures are very powerful in the government, but that's not necessarily odd. They do now have a constitution, but in 2008 they were an absolute monarchy with the king having absolute power. But we're here to talk about poverty, not the culture of Bhutan. So the poverty rates are very high in Bhutan, especially in the rural areas. The rural areas make about 70% of the population, and the poverty there is about 16.7%. This is due to poor infrastructure, really poor farming conditions. This is a very mountainous country. This is not a very good country for farming, which makes it even worse because that is what the majority of the people in that country do. You don't have that many people who are in manufacturing there. It's mostly just small farms. Another is rural-urban migration. A lot of the young people going into the cities to try to find work, but there really isn't that much work for them there. The younger people are actually one of the most likely groups to be unemployed. Women are among another group that's very commonly unemployed. And another is the average family is 4.6. You're in school until you are 13 years old. So that's pretty short, which also is why the literacy rates aren't really that high. Males, it's about 64%. Women is about 55%. Sorry, no. Males is 73%. The whole nation is 64%. Another is the lack of international travel to the nation. They are very protective of their native culture in Bhutan. So basically, they have a lot of countries that they deem a threat to the local culture. The United States is one of them. To travel without a visa, I think there's only a few nations. I think it's Nepal and India, which is actually pretty odd because those nations are Hindus, and Bhutan is not known for its good treatment of Hindus because they deported a bunch of them to Nepal in the 1980s. So Bhutan's probably not the best when it comes to interaction with Hindus. But they're still probably their closest allies to them.